we ready to go? Ok. Doncs molt bona tarda i molt benvinguts. Good afternoon and welcome. Ho dic en anglès perquè la conversa la portarem en anglès. Aquesta és una xerrada que en el seu moment li vam posar per títol alguna cosa així com què hem de fer per recolzar la creació musical contemporània, que podem fer per recolzar els artistes vius que toquen, que composen, que desenvolupen tecnologia i que en definitiva fan bullir una mica l'olla. And now I'm just going to switch the language. I was just saying hello to everybody. And possibly you understand. So, el que farem ara serà, we are going to introduce the participants in this panel. And I think that we are going to make it in a conversational way, because I could just reproduce what I've learned from you researching the internet, and possibly I would be wrong, so I'd rather asking you some questions so we get to know you, and then we will open the conversation to different topics and themes that let us understand what you do, what projects you are involved in, and also if we can give general advice or tips for the musical environment that we are in. Also, what else was I going to say? I don't remember. Anyway, I think that the best thing that we can do is just to dive right in and say hello officially to the participants on the panel. Alexandre Vert from Flashback Ensemble, and Becker from IRCAM, and also from a platform called ULYSSES that I'm sure that the performers in the audience know, and Ángel Faraldo, who is the artistic director of Phonos.
Yes.
Welcome. And please, the audience, can you? Yes. It's good to start things off making some noise, always, right? So I want to start with Alexandre, because you are just right in front of me, and you are part from a musical/technology project called Flashback Ensemble. Can you tell us about it?
So, I direct an ensemble and also, research venue, and the object of this team of artists and researchers is to create new pieces, new art pieces, starting from the music, but co-writing it with our visual artists through research projects, building up new technologies and trying to find new ways of presenting contemporary music on stage.
I was wondering, how is this team that you work with? Is it all musicians that happen to be proficient with technology, or is it a multidisciplinary team of musicians, more tech guys, visual artists, performers? How is it?
Well, when it comes to write with different medias and using nowadays and research technologies, then we need to have specialists of each kind of path that is used. So it means that generally what we do is that we build up teams for productions, and we invite a composer. Last time it was Jesper Nordin, next year would be Alexander Schubert, and we propose them to cooperate with a visual artist. We have teams of visual artists working together, and we try to match composer, visual artist, and research team with engineers in sound, and we are very specialized in gesture capture, gesture motion. So generally this is how it works. First we invite a composer, see what is the project, and then build a team around that composer. So the main input is music, of course, but co-writing it on stage. And the performer, which is the person carrying this performance on stage, is part of the team from the beginning, which means that we don't have a composer writing in his house and then coming up with a piece. We work more like a theatrical company, which means that we ask everybody to be free for 1 or 2 months to work together, so that they can achieve a piece which is a co-writing.
Actually, I think that what you do is, besides or apart from mixing these different profiles and these different skills, that the output of the work that you do as a performance, it's always, you were talking about theater, that it's something that's also a bit like in the middle of theater, performance, like music, electronic music, that it's like in a field that can be in a space that can be performed in different, how I would say, in different areas or in different environments, which can be maybe an electronic music festival, but it could be also maybe like a theater festival and all that kind of things. I think that brings like lots of opportunities to you and artists and projects like you to show what you do.
Well, absolutely. When we started this company, the production structure was built in 2009, and as a company we are in this form, we are together since 2014, and we started with the contemporary field with generally festivals and venues that were used to have avant-garde music, but we realized that we were on the field of research. We were invited to present our works, and on the field of performing arts and visual arts too, which means that it has opened quite hugely the panel of spaces and areas where we could show our work. And this, for me, was the intention was very clear, because as a composer, I always found that when we go to contemporary music, if the stage is not thought before, then we miss sometimes, depending on the purpose of the music, of course. But I think it's a matter of creating a new ritual inside of how to show works, compositions, and to put this idea of welcoming the audience in a space which has been thought and worked on from the beginning, highlights the composer's work, the universe. Then it does open to more audience, I guess, so in that terms, and proposes a new path for people to understand better what is the inner world of the music through this cooperation, because of course it doesn't happen to work with all kind of music, but generally contemporary music, from what I believe, if there's an orchestra, the ritual of going and see an orchestra is very clear. It's very ancient way of going to the concert. Everybody knows where to sit and how to listen to it, and the chef arrives, everybody applauds, and the ritual is very settled. But when it comes to different kind of forms, and especially in chamber music, or with little formations, and sometimes music is beautiful, but the light is horrible. The suit of the performer is really not likewise, and there are many details that stop from diving inside of the sound. So I guess this cooperation is not only to make it more fancy on stage, it's just to achieve a real cooperation between artists and giving point of view, starting from the music and thinking of how the audience could get more space to dive into the composer's universe.
Yeah, thank you very much. We'll find out more about your work, but I would like to speak to Anne now. You work at a very, very well-known organization called IRCAM, right? What is your role there?
My role there is to coordinate the European network that we started to work on back in 2010. This is when we started to gather institutions all over Europe who were all active in the field of professionalization of young artists. So it could have been festivals, academies, or also ensembles, but they all have activities where they invite young artists to work with them and to offer these artists work experiences, the possibility to create new works, to work with different co-artists, might it be composers or performers or conductors, and to then also develop their own network, and not only in their country but all over Europe. And so from 2012 we received European funding for this network, and since now we got renewed funding for 4 more years, from 2020 to 2024, and we are very happy because Mixtur will also join the network for the next 4 years, among 12 other partner institutions in 11 European countries. And so together we try to organize activities to support these young artists, to offer them journeys throughout Europe, journeys where they make different stops in the different partner institutions to encounter different tutors, different production conditions, different musicians to work with, etc.
This is the ULYSSES network.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And then this can also lead, for example, to commissions. So we try to offer co-commissions between different partner institutions to one composer, and then this piece is supposed to tour between the different partner institutions. We invite young ensembles as well to support their work. We also create a ULYSSES ensemble every year, where we recruit young musicians from all over the world, or mostly Europe, to create an ensemble for the summer month, often starting in April or May, going until August or September. And then during the summer month they have different stops as well, where they get together, they work with different conductors, mostly well-known conductors, sometimes also working with other professional ensembles. So it's all about career pushing a little bit, allowing the young artists to develop their network, to present their work to new audiences, etc. To grow up.
Yeah. You talk about it's like 11 different countries, with different partners, and these artists tour a lot around. How important is this mobility for artists?
I mean, it's impossible, of course, to make everyone tour to every place. So it's more that we offer a certain number of a certain amount of activities, and then the artists can also choose and say, okay, this interests me more, for example, because we have. You speak about IRCAM, so at IRCAM we have the specificity of working with electronics, live electronics, and then we have other venues where it's more specific, for example, to work with big orchestras, or so the artists can also choose between the different specificities that are local sometimes, because in Italy it's another culture than in Germany or in Norway, and so they can also choose among these different opportunities. But of course, I mean, this is also one of the main criteria of the European program, that what is called Creative Europe, that supports financially also the network. And so the mobility between the mobility of artists, the mobility of works, and also the interprofessional exchange. These are the main criteria, let's say, of these European programs.
I was having a look at the ULYSSES network website, and it's really like a network where you can see, like, I don't remember which section, but you were like this community or something like this, and you can visualize lots of artists from different places, and I suddenly recognize many artists from Barcelona. And this is nice because you see that it's something that really international, that brings together different creators from different places.
Yeah, this is actually the ULYSSES platform. This is an online platform that was developed thanks to the European support that we got in the network, but it now completely exceeds the network. So this is a platform where we gather, for example, calls for composers, conductors, and performers. So the performers who are interested in different workshops, residencies, etc., they can found all these calls centralized on this platform. They can apply through this platform to some of these workshops. And they can also create for free their profile, artist profile, where they can promote their own work. Then we have this community thread on this platform where people can say, okay, I'm writing a piece and I'm looking for a flutist, or I need a video maker. And so we also hope that this platform can help the artists to help themselves somehow, to be also autonomous and to make their own networking autonomously and not waiting for us from the ULYSSES network to offer them always the activities. What we do, but of course it's limited. Yeah. So we hope that this platform can actually open this up a little bit more to many more institutions than those who are part of the network itself.
What channels do you use to communicate or to disseminate this project to the musicians? They access there through their music schools, or? Yes,
we have. Of course, we have a Facebook page as well, where we also announce the calls that are announced on the platform. And then we have regular newsletters. We have actually a real community manager who's also trying to find new contact points, which is of course conservatories. But all our members, all our network members, they all have of course their own network in their country and collaborators. So we try to share the contacts and to reach out to them so that they can share to the young composers. And it took a while, but now we exist since 2012. So slowly but surely, at least in Europe, the ULYSSES network becomes a little bit like people become to know a little bit about it. And so we have these platforms.
Are you connected also with, with similar organizations in America, for instance, or in Asia?
No, not yet. Not that I know of.
Because
but we try to contact, we are in touch, like, for example, with conservatories in America, because nowadays, the mobility is huge. Many composers from Europe also teach in the US or also in Asia, for example. So we always try that this person then can be a relay of our.
Because myself, I am not from the contemporary music scene, and when I look at it a bit from outside, it always seems to me that it's like a very well-connected network. When you see an orchestra, you see performers from all over the world, and sometimes I ask myself, what do these guys do to be so very well organized in terms of, of being maybe in a research group or in working in different projects. I'm always a bit jealous. Not that I'm an artist myself, but looking at it from an outside perspective, it always seems so well organized to me, and people so very well connected. Europe, America, Asia, whatever. I'm always very impressed.
I have no explanation for that. I don't know. Perhaps, I know that perhaps it's because Europe is very linked to classical music, and so many young artists from the US or Asia are looking or searching for learning experiences in Europe anyways. So that they just also are perhaps more curious. So I don't know.
Could be. And now, Ángel Faraldo, you are the artistic director at Phonos. And so what do you do there?
So.
And he's a musician also.
Yeah, I think of myself as an experimental music maker, and for the past couple of years I've been taking the lead on the artistic direction at the Phonos Foundation. I'm basically still trying to find myself within what it means to be an artistic director of an institution that is already 45 years old. It's one of the first electronic music labs in the whole country, and it's the only one that has survived. That was actually one of the first things to think about. Why is it the only one still surviving? And I think partially in Spain, yeah, is I think partially the answer is because it has a very strong connection with the Fabra University and the Music Technology Group. So that is certainly one of the possibly the main reason why it still exists. But then, I mean, over the years, it has had sort of interrupted activity, periods of activity and inactivity. So I'm trying to think what could be our role nowadays, in the present society, mostly related to our action in Barcelona as a sort of like taking a differential position and sort of like a place of cooperation and complementarity with other alternatives in the city, such as Festival Sonar, Mutec, Mixtur itself, but also music production centers and so on. So that's kind of sort of like the path I'm trying to think, like, yeah, what is really differential for us? So one of the strong points again is the connection with a very strong research institution, such as in music and technology, such as the MTG. And I think our contribution there is like to provide critical perspectives towards using technology in sound or music creation contexts. So basically providing critical perspectives towards technology, but from the arts or from music especially, but also the other way around, like being critical towards specific usages of technology within creative contexts.
Mm-hmm. As a musician yourself, you work with technology?
Yeah,
Yes?
that's the path I took. I mean, unfortunately, since I am artistic director of Phonos, I do not have much time to devote to my own artistic project, but I guess that is, again, waves and timings. But yeah, I mean, I'm really interested in the connections between creating with technology, especially like taking sort of ecological approaches towards using technology. So I'm really interested in reutilization of things and found objects, found technological objects, archaeology of media as well, and that's also an interesting position, given that Phonos has possibly the largest archive in electronic music in Spain again. So dealing with how to preserve that, how to be able to reprogram electronic music from even the early 2000s is not such a trivial thing. So those things are interesting lines to pull, and hopefully in the future we can find resources to actually pull from those lines.
Mm-hmm. Actually, when you say the early 2000s, it seems like it was yesterday, and when you think, well, it was 20 years ago, and for certain types of music, especially music that's very much related to research, is like 3 or 4 or 5 lifetimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it looks a bit like prehistory or archaeology.
Yeah, no, I mean certainly like in media in general, no, and in our particular case with music. I mean certainly with the digital adventure, it's really problematic. It's way easier to think about like rescreens and analog equipment from the 60s than running a max patch from 1998 or something in a modern computer. So I don't know. That raises interesting questions about like how the digital optimism or promise brings also like certain problems as well.
Also as well, I think that there are many very young artists who seem like very much more interested in an analog synthesizer from the 1970s or whatever than Max MSP patch. I don't know why. Like the youngest ones seem so very much interested in this ancient technology that it's still like so very capable to produce amazing futuristic sounds.
Yeah, I mean I think there's a lot of it's probably something to look at from cultural studies, or like what's like there's some sort of I mean it's certainly very sexy, like going back to analog synthesizers and so on, and to a certain extent the computer has taken over all aspects of our lives. So myself, for example, after working extensively with digital media, I went back to doing like no input mixing and feedback with objects and things like that, especially because like as an activity, I don't know, it's like, yeah, well, I'm going to leave the computer aside at least to make some noise. You know? So that's part of the, I mean, it's still a superficial answer, but perhaps there's something about that, and also something about this sort of, I don't know, myth of like going a little back and the smell of like the retro and the custom-made things and so on.
And also things that are like very
Touchable,
tangible,
yeah.
like the cables and the things.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for that, I think the promise of tangible interfaces was really phenomenal when it, I mean, think about Reactable and things like that, and then all of a sudden the iPad came, and that was a very promising and exciting thing, and now we realize that it's extremely boring to touch a flat surface, right? But it was really exciting back in the days. It was.
Yes.
We thought it was the future. And
Yeah, totally. And in fact, I don't think that there are many instruments that have like the same dimension that have appeared, the last 10 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like it stayed there, like this experience. So I would like to open up the conversation. Please, the audience, if you have any questions that you want to make, if you want to participate, please don't be shy and do it. Like, we are open. You just have to raise your hand. I don't see you because it's very, very dark. But if you I don't know, call us or raise your hand or bring us your attention, we can. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. It's always cool to be able to see the audience. You can always make questions, raise your hand, don't be shy, and you can contribute to our conversation. First of all, I would like to ask you one question that any of you can answer and we can add on. One of the things that we were like bringing to the table, it was, what can we do to support young artists in creating their careers? Like, Anna, you are completely specialized in your project in this to provide these opportunities. But from your perspective, as artists yourselves and as artists that you possibly work also with younger ones or with your research institutions and within your work, I'm sure that you welcome younger people all the time. What is it that you think that they need in order to bring the projects forward? Is it this world a more difficult one than 10 years ago, or how is it? What do you think that they need?
It's hard to say what they need. But, from my experience and with Ángel, we have some projects going on together. We have realized that artists, there are different type of positions, and that the way politics and the way the industry is going is that it's pushing us to be artists and producers at the same time. I mean, like the festival Mixtur, like many institutions, if we go back to IRCAM, it has always been the means of artists that needed to create tools for their work to be able to be existing. So on my side, I started as a composer and then as a teacher, and then build up an ensemble and then an institution to welcome artists. And specifically, I am based in Perpignan, which is next to the Spanish border, and then we realized that in the cultural area there were some grants, because the main thing, if artists, they have ideas, they have skills, and as well as research people, what we need is to find specific areas to show it. And so this is basically what's the main tool at the moment, is cooperation, which is not a bad thing, because it means then we need to start sharing our experiences, sharing our spaces, sharing our skills, to create a kind of a network where one artist, this is the main deal with contemporary music, if you make one piece and then you perform it one time and then it's dead, then you are meant to be producing, I don't know how many pieces a year to be existing. And this is absolutely, I mean, if you're a composer that needs to compose 30 pieces a year, no problem. I mean, it's a question of personality. But if when creating a world, you need to show it, to express it, and to have some feedback. So networking is also that. It is very fashionable at the moment because of the European government trying to push everybody to cooperate, but it has a lot of meaning in the world where we live in, because if we take it just on the regional area, nobody knows, but Occitania, Catalonia, and Balearic Islands are part of a European region called the Pyrénées-Méditerranée. And when you discover that, you think, oh, that's fantastic. So how can we make this this idea become more seriously something? So with Ángel, we are cooperating on a Euro-regional, how do you say it in English? I don't know. Euro-regional plan where we offered to 4 different composers to go in 4 different institutions, Catalonia, Balearic Islands and Occitania, and then they have the opportunity to play their creation 4 times. So that's, for me, I think this is a very concrete response to what in nowadays world, and we're going to go on next year where we're going to involve 8 partners in that thing, which means that one composer, one artist will have 8 venues where to work, to show its work. So that's, for me, that's a good answer to.
Yeah. No, actually, I was thinking because we always also from Catalonia or from Spain, we many times we see France as the first world in culture, and it's something that here it happens a lot, not just in music, it happens in theater, it happens in dance, that people work for many months on a certain project, and then they only have one chance to play the show in Barcelona. Maybe if they are lucky, they can play it a couple of times more in other places in Catalonia, and they are super lucky if, I don't know, sometimes they can have like a tour with 6 dates all over Spain, or if they can go abroad. That I think that it's very good regarding this region that you say, how was it called? Mediterranean?
Pyrénées-Méditerranée.
That we are very close in geography, so artists can play several times in several venues, even in 2 different countries, and at the same time it's you were mentioning ecology.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
You don't need to go to Japan to make a couple of gigs, that you can move close to your area and maybe waste less resources than taking planes.
And once you have a piece set, like it's actually an ecological and ethical standpoint to play several times, otherwise it's like a waste of resources in a certain way.
And I guess that in a way it also affects the quality of the output of the artist. As you said, an artist to compose, they need time, they need feedback. Whatever you are working on, it needs to build.
It does depend on the personality, I guess, because it's a question historically, I guess the problematic is never solved. In nowadays, most of the composers, they teach, or they give classes, piano classes or whatever. So to be a composer and living off your own music in the contemporary field, I guess there might be 4 or 5 or maybe 10 people doing that, and then more seriously everybody gets in charge of putting up a festival, putting up a production association, and getting involved in, because there are big lacks in that area. I mean, the work Anne is doing is probably for artists is absolutely useful, because otherwise we are in charge of doing it, and if not every artist can do both. It is most of my composers friends, they will not be able to do that, and this is quite very clearly, it's not their work.
Yeah, no, and they have to juggle with different jobs, the teaching, the whatever. Well, like Ángel, he said, I'm not making much music these days.
No, exactly. Neither earning much money.
But I agree. I mean, this one-shot issue, this observation that actually many young artists, they have the chance to do one piece and then it is performed once and then have to go somewhere else to do another one. And that was one of the main also triggers of the ULYSSES network, to try to really more concretely to construct the careers of the young artists, to give them the chance to work with different ensembles, for example, to play the same piece with different ensembles, because then of course you have more time and you can perhaps arrange things differently and have more working experience in different contexts. And I think time is for sure, because you were asking what do they need. I mean, time is for sure an important element. And then I think also this cooperation, because I mean it's important to meet others, I mean when we speak of composers, for example, to get out of the studio where they are just in front of their score and to put the music to life.
And also, I guess, leave a little bit so they can have inspiration when they have to write the scores again. I was also moderating a talk a few months ago, and one of the artists was telling, basically what we need is some life, because after working a lot and trying to tour, producing their own project, managing the communication and organizing things, they said, I don't have like a life of my own, so I can rest and I can, take inspirations to keep on working. And that was especially true. I remember a couple of participants that were women, and one of them had like a little kid, and it was like just life, so you can put whatever you are living into your work and say something.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure whether to bring up this conversation or this question or not, because sometimes I think that we are a bit bored about it. It's like the context that we are now living, especially. I think that it's fantastic that you have both been able to travel to Barcelona, because it's affecting artists of all kinds, of all genres, of all disciplines, etc., etc. For instance, from your own organizations, do you have like any, initiatives, proposals to help this community of artists, composers, etc. in these tough times, or is it still everything very, very difficult?
I think it's still very, very difficult. it's for sure also very difficult to project ourselves, because we all have no clear vision about how long this will last, and I think we all hide a little bit also behind the thing, okay, we don't change anything because we still hope that things will come back to the state they were in before. But of course it's heavily affecting. I mean, when you work on a European project and it's about mobility, and we also created new artistic programs where we're trying to also, co-creation, you were speaking about that as well before, I mean, to bring artists together so that they can sign a piece together, not one composer and one performer, but really working together on new pieces. So all these questions, bringing together European artists in one place so that they work together, I mean, this is now, okay, how do we arrange this differently nowadays? Is all this happening online? Can it happen online? What is the quality of cooperation when you're not physically together? I mean, for some aspects of the work it can work, for others not. So I think we're still very much in a phase where we have to adapt and where we have to try out also things.
One day I was thinking, I was seeing, I don't know, maybe I was watching TV and I was seeing like musicians rehearse with their instruments, and I was wondering, can you really learn when you are in your home and maybe your teacher is listening to you and seeing how you perform through streaming, that this physical distance that might be also an obstacle for the learning process, not just collaboration or cooperation, and how do you see it from the perspective of technology? Have you been trying working with the online format and that kind of things, or?
Well, I was going to say something, also trying to relate this particular situation with support to young artists and so on. I think this brings in an opportunity to be proud of being local and work in the local, and that's an opportunity to create in local communities. That seems like an obvious thing to do or to think about, and that is a place where I find certain lacks and problems. No, like so. Before I get into technology and online activities, which I am in principle not really favorable towards substituting the real experience of an immersive concert with something. I mean, and if we do things, it's perhaps because we need to prove to our sponsor that we're still doing things, and in that sense, we're doing a radio show and launching a new net label. So trying to be creative with that, but also something that sort of can project into the future and not be only a symptom and a reaction that is a momentary solution. But back to that idea, I think, I mean, producing things and touring and like creating networks of venues and places and ensembles and institutions is great, but also creating networks locally is really, really important, and that is, I think, a very essential way of supporting young or and not so young creators. Basically, getting them to know each other, getting them to let them know that they can help each other or that they can support beyond financial, because sometimes it seems that we problematize things on a financial basis, yes. But it's we have certain studios and it's like having permanent calls of things rather than a competition and selection procedures, and so it's like, no, you can come here anytime you want and there's no filter. I think those things are important to be shout loud. It's like, because that's an important thing that can come out, like to be supportive in an unfiltered way. I don't know. I think that's.
I can imagine, like finding like a common space where you can share your
exactly.
your data patches.
Thinking more in hubs, yes. Or agencies,
yeah.
or places to bring in agency and support in non-judgmental ways. I don't know. I think the idea of young. It's related to immature, to something, I mean, to power positions that I think it's good to, I mean, provide spaces to meet, to gather, to do things together, and just let them emerge. I don't know.
Yeah, I would add something to what Ángel is saying. It's also that the world has changed so much, and we are regarding avant-garde or experimental music maybe in the 70s, 80s, or even 90s, we had a clear idea of who was doing what somewhere, but nowadays we just have no clear picture of how many creators are making stuff and which are out of the institutions, who are working from another input, coming from maybe more experimental or pop music, and or coming from plastic art or visuals. And so this is something also that we have to integrate in our thoughts, that we are living in this idea of young artists, of maturity, or providing support. We also have a very small idea of the world we artistically are living in. So to have open spaces like Ángel is proposing is really a good way to know when the door is open and anybody can come in, rather than the old politics of making an open call and taking the one you believe is the best in the middle of all that. We need to have spaces where people can interact, and without regarding less of knowing who's going to win, just being together and sharing and discovering it. And so this, what Ángel is saying, I really do believe in that we need, in Perpignan, in the space we have, there is an open space, daily open for people to come and use the tools, but also to, if they need to meet or to listen to music, there are hours where people can come and share. And this is part of the process, I guess.
Yeah, and well, that's important, I think, on a local scale, as Angel was saying, like, it's good for the local community to get together and find, like, a point of reference. I can go there and I can meet with like-minded people, but it's also when you have the chance to visit other countries that you know what is the point of reference. If I'm going to Perpignan, if I want to know what's going on and find the like-minded people like me, perhaps I would already know where I have to go, where I have to visit. I don't know.
It is something that is, I don't know about Spain, but unless in France, there is a huge political desire of making those spaces to be created. They call them tiers-lieux, the third space, and basically the idea is like a Fab Lab or something like that, but from different means. And there are tiers-lieux dedicated to creations, which are slowly getting as Centre National de Création Musicale, which is a label in France where there are 7 of them on the territory. Now are popping up those spaces where people creating sound, playing with composition, can come and share and have tools together and spaces to gather all that. And I think this is a very good answer to this globalization and to those flow of information that we have to go through. We need to meet and to exchange freely without what has been going on with the contemporary music, especially, which was very elitist, and where just a couple of few could happen to be existing and the others could disappear. Now I think we're just existing in a different world where probably all the young artists that work with a computer in their home have much to learn, teachers, about the world we're living in.
Yeah, I think it's true. I mean, it's, of course, it's not only about geographical borders. It's also about institutional borders or borders between scenes. So I agree that, of course, it's important to have these open spaces where people can work together completely independently of their teaching background or diplomas or what they have, just because they have the will and the passion and the curiosity. And I think there's a lot to explore on a more local level, and I think it's also important, also because of these ecological reasons. I think we have to think about this whole system of mobility. I think we have to adapt that a little bit. But still, I also think that it's very important to have opportunities to confront yourself to something that is not local. I mean, to confront yourself to the other, to a different language, to a corporation that also confronts you with different habits, different aesthetic cultures. And this is also something that I find interesting in these European projects. And okay, how can we find then the balance between these two? Or I think they can be complementary, of course, but.
So, any questions from the audience? Are you very quiet and shy? No? They look at like this. It's me? No? So, if you're not bringing any questions, I will think myself one, I think. Also to change the topic and to go to, lighter things and things that makes us think maybe to a brighter future and the things that get our engine rolling or flowing. I don't know what's the verb. To each of you, what do you think right now in experimental contemporary creation is the most exciting thing? What happens now that it's super exciting and you cannot get enough of it and you think that it's the best? Alexandra.
Well, I would say it's the fact that in the festivals like Mixtur or whatever what's happening right now is that we can get to hear so many different worlds of making sound, And this is very exciting because this means, in opposition with more classical forms of festivals, I like the idea that we have spaces where we can come and discover and come back from the festival where we have heard something that we haven't heard before. And this is very exciting because the borders are disappearing between different genres and many ways of approaching sound. So yes, I can't get enough of meeting those artists.
And what about you?
I'm not sure that I have an answer to this question, but I'm really curious about, I mean, what will come up from these constraints that we have nowadays and this online creation. I mean, many artists were called during the lockdown to, okay, can you just offer something online? And I think this is a very tricky question, or a very tricky demand also to artists, and I think this needs, I mean, it's not that it is already happening, but there is for sure a lot of research, and this is what I'm curious about for the next month and years, actually. What can we make out of this constraint of online?
It's going to be a door for creativity. We have seen it these days, and it will grow for certain. Yes. Ángel, what about you?
Yeah, I don't know.
What are you excited about?
I'm excited about many things, which is, I guess, a way of like diversifying and I mean, on a personal level, I'm excited about magic, and that is just an statement. And as I mean, from Phonos, I mean, and like that relationship between technology and magic is what drives me totally. And like, but from a more institutional viewpoint, I'm really curious and very critical also to using artificial intelligence, which is like a top, of course, I mean, it's a very recurrent
It's part of the magic
thing these days. Well, I mean, it's problematic, so that's interesting, right? But I mean, it's something that is around us, like the deep learning, the big data thing, and I'm really curious about like seeing interesting artistic output coming from there. I think it's still, I haven't seen something that have blown my mind yet, and that is very exciting. So.
It's true that the connections between magic and technology is something that more and more artists are addressing in different ways nowadays, and I also find it like very, very exciting to find this mix. I also think when you were saying that one of your specialities is motion capture, and I thought about that is also like today like a very exciting field with those motion capture suits and virtual reality and all these possibilities. How are you feeling about that?
Well,
I want to put on a motion capture suit at a certain point.
Absolutely. I mean, what happens with motion capture, I guess, is there is a connection to the kid which is sleeping inside of us, and when if you move the arm and it generates pictures and sounds, and it's just wonderful sensation. So on an artistic point, what has been existing now for at least 10, 15 years, people working on that kind of interaction, gesture, sound, images. There's a lot to do, I guess behind that there is a fantasy of a human being a machine or the opposite, and so as the flow of how do you say, gérer? As the data is getting more and more easy to use, and the latency between real life and virtual life tends to get more and more on time, I guess. For me, there is so much to do anyway. It's a field where there's so much space and so many artists that can propose something. It's very exciting for all the kids sleeping inside of us, that there's going to be more proposals.
Definitely. I always think when I see that kind of technological worlds that work with interaction and visuals, I always think that what if we invited someone from the past, I don't know, from the 15th century, and we invited this person, like, take a look into the future, that possibly they would think it's magic, and possibly their brain will melt off, or they will be scared or fascinated. Or if when they return back to their times, possibly all the friends will think that they are completely crazy. So, I don't know. I think that's more or less how creation is nowadays. That every day it resembles more and more to magic as technology allows it, in a way.
Yeah, I'm not completely sure. I mean, when I think of magic, I think because it's in a way in danger. Somehow, I think we're so used to the to technology everywhere that there is risks that we sort of assume technology as a given. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's we tend to see. We already know. We have the intuitions about how technology works. Very, very strong intuitions. And I mean, you can give a young kid a smartphone and she will know how to use it immediately. So I don't know. I mean, that sort of amusement, thinking more in like a 19th century circus and so on, I think we're in danger of losing that sort of innocence. So I'm sort of, yeah, skeptical about like technology is so overly present that I mean, there's room for that, and it's always it will always be related to that possibility of the new and the unexpected. But I don't know.
I can't stop being amazed. So I think that we need to be closing up the conversation since this audience is not willing to participate.
Maybe if no one has questions, I would like to ask you to know a little bit which would be your approach regarding the creation of new publics or new audiences, would be young audiences or other stages, ages. Considering that normally contemporary music or creation, etc., it's not the same in other countries, differences, but there's some things we as a festival think about, and I'm sure that you also thought about this subject. So strategies or maybe actions that you think can be good for creating new audiences.
I mean, for me, is the question it's I mean, something we are. It's our responsibility to think about that constantly, and I find it a very difficult question to answer. That it's only a kind of solved by a trial and error sort of mechanism. Now I'm in Phonos, for example, we're trying to, on the one hand, start doing things in the streets directly, in parks and things like that, and that is, very COVID friendly. I mean, I'm not sure it's going to work. It's probably going to be a total disaster. But trying to get out of the regular venues, it's something that we're going to try and probably fail. And then it's I don't know. Giving agency, like making workshops, providing spaces to break things and to play around with things, and from there create active engagement with experimental music being active agents in making sound, whether music or not. It's also something we're trying to engage with. But other than that, I think it's only words. I don't know. What do you guys think?
No, I think you're right. That this sort of this agency is important. To stop putting the artist on this pedestal and say, okay, this is like the artist, and he or she has worked for years, and this is a very difficult technique to reach this point of artistic work and performance, but more to give the opportunity to the young people to experiment themselves and to understand the keys of creation and to try out and finally to feel that actually, okay, there's things that to understand how it works and that also and also be able to speak about it and to not have the feeling that this is like something that is on a different level and unreachable, but to feel like part of it. This might help too.
Yeah, I don't know. While you were talking, I had memories from my years living in the Netherlands, and my experience there was quite different. Here, regarding the position of certain experimental arts, really in the lives of the city, and occupying places where you can go and hang out at the same time than you're like experiencing a performance. I don't know, like really having fun and showing that we're having fun doing what we do is an important part of it as well.
That's true. So, are there any more questions? No? So I think that perhaps we should call it a day. First of all, thank you to all of you. Gràcies a tots per estar aquí, en un dia tan estrany. Diada de Catalunya, festa, fa bon temps. Encara és estiu, moltes gràcies. And thank you very much to Alexandre, Anna, and Ángel for sharing this time with us. Thank you very much, and you too for traveling, which is a challenge these days. It's so amazing that you could be here. And I also want to thank Mixtur for inviting me to participate and giving me the opportunity to meet you and to chat with you for a little while. And també m'agradaria dir-li al Mixtur que molt bé d'haver mantingut el festival, de seguir aquí en aquest any tan difícil per tothom, i que l'any que ve, el 21, doncs més i millor. Ara, pels que esteu aquí, sabeu que hi ha una performance a 2:15 aquí a fora al passadís. Primer podeu prendre una cervesa, passar-ho bé, xerrar i aquestes coses. A les 6:30 la performance i a les 7 hi ha un concert. I ja està, moltíssimes gràcies. Thank you very much.